Oh,
Kazakh. Okay, you're live.
all right. So we're learning this evening the Dvar Malchus of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach from Shabbos Parsha Dvar Tisha B'Av, the same kriyas as we have now, Toshin Nun Aleph. And there's also part of the Sikha is that on Tisha B'Av, on the Tzom, on the fast itself, in the late afternoon before Mincha, the Rebbe came in to the Beis HaKnesses and he said a Sikha, I say a short Sikha on Tisha B'Av, and then he gave out Devarim to everybody, and then they davened Mincha and Mariv, and after Mariv, the Rebbe said another Sikha. So those Sikhas are also included in the Dvar Malchus itself, which makes it actually a bit longer than what the usual Dvar Malchus are. The Dvar Malchus are usually massive in their own right, but this one's even more. And the learning is taking place in the Beis Knesset, Tzemach Tzedek, Be'ir, Tika Ir Kodesh Tsfat, Tibeinu V'Secheinu B'Mheira V'Yomeinu, Ve'Erev Ze Oyer L'Ches, Menachemov, Erev Shabbos, Chazon, Toshin Ein Tet. By the way, if I remember rightly, Malchus has Yom Holodos tonight. Am I right? Ches Menachemov. Yeah. So, Beis Hashem, we're going to do somewhat like we did in recent weeks, where we've already been through a couple of times the beginning part of the Sikha. So we're going to just sum that up, Beis Hashem. Then we're going to try and learn more intensively towards the middle and the final part of the Sikha. So the point made at the beginning of the Sikha, from which we can make our, as it were, entrance to the whole union, was that the Rebbe brought down from the Yerushalmi and from the Medrash Rabbah that on Tisha B'Av, that was the day that Moshiach was born. That was the day that Noilad Moshiach in Shal Yisrael. So the Rebbe said that when Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, then the fast is pushed off till Sunday. But the Rebbe develops at length that we can't say that Shabbos pushes off the desirable things in Tisha B'Av. It only pushes off the unpleasant aspects of Tisha B'Av, but that's the Inuim and the fasting and things of that sort. It's not possible to say that Shabbos, being as it is itself a inyan of Geula, like it's brought down in the Gemara Masechta Tomid, that Shabbos, the Levium used to say Shir Shel Yom, they say Shir Yom HaShabbos, and then they finished by saying, brought down in the Gemara, that Shir Yom HaShabbos and Shabbos Hu Menucha ulachai oilomim, and a bracha for the coming of Moshiach. So we see that the pnimis of Shabbos is anyway, so we say at the end of benching and that on Shabbos, we Shabbos Manucha L'Chayin Elomim. So we see that the pnimis of Shabbos anyway is the inyan of Geula. It's not trying to say that Shabbos would push off everything connected with Tisha B'Av. That's what it's the birthday of Moshiach, or that's a Ika in the whole of Shabbos itself. And furthermore, in a general way, the Rebbe made the point that the whole creation is for the sake of Yidden and Torah. Rashi brings it right at the beginning of his Pirush al Torah. Beis Reishis, V'shvil Yisrael Shenikor Reishis, V'shvil HaTorah Shenikor Reishis. As he came, the whole inyan of the whole Bria is for the sake of the Torah and for the sake of the Yidden. And therefore the Torah says, Daber al B'nai Yisrael. A mashma that the B'nai Yisrael are even more primordial and more essentially important, Kaviocho, even than the Torah. The Torah is for them. As if that's the case, then something which is so important to the Jewish people, like the birth of Moshiach, that's a Dover Ikri. It's not just to say that something in Torah like Shabbat would push that away. If that what we push away is only the difficult and undesirable parts for Yidden of Tisha B'Av, but not the fact that it's the birth of Moshiach. That leads to all sorts of special milas in this Shabbat, which means that every Shabbos is a ma'ain till the Yosef Lova, as we just pointed out. But this one's got a special mila, and therefore, Al Pi Halacha, it's put down in the Kisvei Arizal, he brings the halacha that Tisha B'Av in the afternoon, we say all sorts of Sukkim of Nechoma, and in the Tefillah of Middah we say Nachem, well that's a different Nechoma, and we sit already on the benches, and it's already much more sort of moving towards Nechoma. So the Gemara said that's when they lit the fire in the Beis HaMikdash, that's when all the Ikar Tzoros really began. So what are we doing? We should late on Tisha B'Av, we should make the fast even stronger. What are we doing? So the Arizal writes two reasons for that. The first one I'm not going into right at the moment. The second one is, he said, because on Tisha B'Av in the afternoon was born Moshiach. Moshiach. The Arizal writes in the Shara Kavan. It comes out of his that's the reason why we make the whole fast easier as the day goes on. When it should really be getting a lot heavier, it becomes a lot easier because the koyach of birth of Moshiach changes the whole nature of the fast. Not only it has the power not to be pushed off by Shabbos, but even when the fast is in the middle of its whole on Sunday, then in the afternoon, the koyach of the factor was Neilat, Moshiach, and Shel Yisrael, but that will change the whole nature of the Hanhoga of Yidden during the fast. So that's basically, so the Rebbe makes the point that since Shabbos is anyway Shayach to Geula, how much more so when it's the birthday of Mashiach. And therefore the Rebbe says there's another very fascinating din, and that is that on Shabbos afternoon we eat a Suda Mafseket. Suda Shlishiyas Shel Shabbos becomes the Suda Mafseket. So it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, he writes that when you eat that Suda, then you should put bosel, yayin, and all sorts of good zachen on your table. Umale al shulchanei Kesuda Shlomo HaMelech, B'shas Malchus. They bring to Beis Yosef in the lesson of the Shulchan Aruch that on the Suda Mafsekes, you have to not just not fast or eat a little meal like you do when it's in the weekday, and there's all sorts of things you're not allowed to eat. Or here you pack on your table, Kesuda Shlomo B'shas Malchus. The Rebbe himself, I don't know what the Rebbe does, even when it was Shabbos, it's hard to know. Or he tells all the Sidman they should do it. So he does tremendous Suda Shlomo B'shait and everything. So the Rebbe said we see him came that Shabbos is not only a pushing away anything that's got to do with the Geula. On the contrary, it makes the whole issue, which comes into several halachas, and therefore the Rebbe suggests that maybe since we're facing such a question that is dealt with by the Gemara Masechta Megillah, that we push it off, even though Tisha B'Av is a very strict fast. And the Rebbe said maybe it's kedai to add even more on your Suda or any of the Sudas that you eat on Shabbos, Tisha B'Av. You should add extra food into what's already a Shabbos meal to show that you're not only not allowing, any possibility of a thought of being mamayet because of Shabbos, but you're adding because of the aspect of Geula, the birthday of Mashiach. So that's basically where we're holding. So on that basis, the Rebbe made a very fascinating case that when it falls out like this, we fast on the 10th day. We don't fast on Tisha B'Av, we fast on Sunday, which is Asiri. So the Rebbe said that's like Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is also the Asiri, and it's written that the Gemara in Masechta Yuma brings it down. The Rebbe writes that the Alter Rebbe and Shulchan Aruch is ma'arik about it, that when you eat and drink a lot on Tushi, then the person considers as if you fasted on the Tushi and also on the Assyria, on Yom Kippur itself. So from that we see that there's an amazing mitzvah on Erev Yom Kippur that you're eating, but the eating is considered as you're fasting. So that it must be a very remarkable type of eating. But it means kipshute, that you got to eat. And to use the expression in English, you've got to pack in. You've got to keep. And the Alter Rebbe says that you have to eat enough for 2 days. The Alter Rebbe said that you have to eat enough for Erev Yom Kippur, and you have to eat a Sudas Yom Kippur as well. You have to eat enough for 2 days, like as if you were eating the Yom Kippurs or Yom Simcha. Yeah, and the only reason we don't eat it because it happened to be written in the Torah. That's so fast. But really, it's a Yom Simcha. It's not like the other part. That's all. So it's written that if you fast on the 9th, then you've got this tremendous, as if you fasted on the 9th and the 10th. So the Rebbe said this year is we're like that. We're fasting on the 9th. We're not fasting. We're eating a Suda Shlomo B'shati on the 9th. But we're going to fast on the 10th. If Chas v'Shalom Mashiach doesn't come before then, we're going to fast on the 10th. But remember, we're like Yom Kippur, and the Rebbe said that Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur are very similar. Yom Kippur is a 24-hour fast, and so is Tisha B'Av. You have to fast at the nighttime and the daytime, just like on Yom Kippur. And there are several things that Benegir to Bein HaShmoshes, it's got a similar din to Erev Yom Kippur, v'chulu, big similarities between Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. So the Rebbe introduces a whole amazing new, like sort of a drosh, or how would you call it, an approach, that when you're eating the Suda Mafsekes, especially on Shabbos in the afternoon, the Suda Shlishi, then you should bear in mind that you also got a certain schus that you're like the person on Erev Yom Kippur. That's a very special type of eating because it's like as if you're fasting. It's just like Yom Kippur. And that's an amazing chiddush that the Rebbe brings it. So that's basically what you might call the feed-in, like the lead-in to the Teichon of the Shiva. So now we're going to start on the chapter Histakles Acheret, another look, another, how do you call it? Another cook. That is. So the Rebbe says, Histakles Makife Yoter, when you look at a bit more broader outlook on the whole topic, Ha'uda Shetisha B'Or, the fact that Tisha B'Or, Asiyum Shal HaShloisha, what Tisha B'Or is the end of the 3-week period of the Bein HaMetzorim. V'chein Yud Zayin B'Tammuz, what is the Aschola Shal Shloisha Shavuos? Both of them Chal B'Shabbos, yeah, and he called both of them. Yud Zayin was Chal B'Shabbos, therefore the fast was pushed off till Sunday. The same with the end. The end is Tisha B'Av. It also occurs on Shabbos and it's pushed off till Sunday. Yeah, Mishana Eskola Mashmois Shala Shloisha Shavuos. If it's like that, the Rebbe said, then it alters the whole character of the Gimel Shvuos. So how does that work? So the Rebbe says, Shloisha Shavuos, Oi Bein HaMetzorim, as we call it. That's the way that's referred to in the Gemara and Medrash Chazal as Bein HaMetzorim. Hayomim shebein Yud Zayin B'Tammuz L'Tisha B'Av Nechshovim Liyamei Puronim. In simple terms, if we look in the Psukim on which they're based, and also the Gemaras and the Medrashim, these are days of the remembrance, at least, of punishment, of not good things. He said, he said, oh, at the moment that they begin and they complete on Shabbos, Yomim. In other words, the longing of all days, how they call it, the most longed for and the most, how they call it, yearned for day is Shabbos. Of Amelakuto is that when these days, which are days of Puranas, begin with the most longed for, most perfect day. Why is it so longed for? Because it's a day of oineg, eloki, yeah, of its oineg, the very opposite of inoi. And then hoifchim shloisha shavuos elu liyomim miyuchodim. And these days lose their simple mashmoes, both in halacha and in ruchnias, and they become very special days. What is their speciality? Yomim bohem ma'irim shloishas hamoichin o eloikeim of chokma bina v'dar. So the Rebbe said that what is anyway here in the Gimel Shvuos, it's anyway there, but it's Behilim. Most years when Tisha B'Av falls out on the weekday, and same with Shavuos and B'Tammuz, then that's Behilim. When these are preceded and finished by Shabbos, well, that elevates that these Gimel Moichin come out B'Golim. Now, what are the Gimel Moichin? Chokma Bina V'Dar. And the middle Rebbe brings down in the famous how do you call it, the Maimah that he said when he visited Rebbe Kiva Eger that time. I've forgotten which year it was. He said the Maimah al Totza es Moya, the Pasuk in our Parsha. And it's a huge little Maimah. It must have taken about a good 2 hours to have said that Maimah. And he said it in front of Rebbe Kiva Eger. And Rebbe Kiva Eger was sitting on that, and he was he was hearing this man, yeah.
Oh.
So over there, it's brought down that really Yidden have been promised 10 countries, 10, as it were, land. So we've only got 7 of them now. We got 5.5 on this side of the Jordan, and then we have another, well, I'm sorry, 4.5 on this side. Then we have 2.5 on the Me'aver Yarden. So that's altogether 7. Of the Liosid Lower, we're going to have Kaini, Knizi, Kadmoini. That's to say, Edom, Moab, Amoin. They're going to be added to it. Rashi at the end of the parasha, Rashi brings all this into Ramban, a big long Ramban about the Hedivas, which Rashi on certain points, of everybody agrees that Liosid Lover, when Mashiach comes, we're going to get these extra 3 lands. Why can't we get them now? What is the prevention that we don't have them now? So the Middle Rebbe is Masba over there, that they are the 3 madrigas of Moichin. And he says that they're Kesser, Chochmah, Ubina. He calls them Kesser. He says that Edom is Kesser. In other words, Edom is a big problem. And that's even from Kesser, the Clipper. On Moab is Ob, is Chochmah. And what's the other one? Amoin. Oh, that's even from Bina. Yeah. And Vamela, the Ika Avoida, Bismana Golas is with the Midas, and that's 7. The inner of the Gila Hamoyhin, that's the Gila that's going to be Alidei, Moshe Tzidkenu Alidei. So the Rebbe says that when Shabbos occurs at both ends, well, that elevates the 3 weeks that these Gimel Moichin, which are waiting to be given to us, we haven't got them yet, but we're going to get them very soon. Yeah, Be'ez Hashem. Well, they're already shining much more begolui, and there's a Ha'ora Gedola from the Kesser Chochmah Bina, or Chochmah Bina Das, according to another Cheshbon, of the 3 lands that are going to be given to us, Leosid Lovi. Yeah, that's what the Rebbe said. Of Amela, he said, Yomim Shaim Keneged Shloisha Arotzais. They are days that they're in parallel to these 3 extra lands. Asidim B'nai Yisrael Lekabel B'Geula. That we're going to get in the Geula. Noisef L'Shitla Shovi. In addition to what we got now. Yeah, the shetler we have now. Gam Eretz Akine Kniziva Kadmoini. But that's the 3 extra, that's Inifan Edom and Moab and Ammon. Those Gimel in Yonim are shining now much more begolui, and therefore it alters somewhat the and so this is in light of what the Rebbe pointed out already in several of these recent Dvar that we've learned, that as the closer we go to the Gula Shlema, the more it's a mitzvah and the more it's an Indian to stress the positive aspect of every Indian in Torah. Even though the Indian may have a certain negative mashmois to it, al-pidin, there's an Indian to learn that and to try and interpret that in a more positive and a more sympathetic way, the closer you become to the goal. So therefore the Rebbe is doing everything he can to build up these inyanim in such a way that there'll be more positive light, and it won't be just the Parshas of Puranas that it normally is. And therefore the Rebbe says those 3 moichin, which are more begili, they're parallel to the 3 lands that we're going to get soon when Mashiach comes. So the Rebbe said, if you look at the 3 parshas that we read during the 3 weeks, it's over there in Chutzlar. It was Pinchas, Matas and Masay were together by them, and Dvarim. So the Rebbe said, Asher bekulam, vehem maduba al chalukas Eretz Yisrael kula, la'am Yisrael, koilo gam asheter sheme'evel yadem mizroha, achilek oisoi kiblu v'nei gadu v'nei Reuven. So the Rebbe said that it's an amazing thing, and the Monk Jerov has got a big thing in his forum about this, and a lot of Mephoshim talk about it, that all the Parshas that we read in the Bein HaMetzorim all talk about dividing up Eretz Yisrael. Hey, all the tribes are going to get this and this. Yeah, so in Parsha Pinchas it's written Le'ela Techaloch, and how it has to be Begoyrel, and how the girl spoke, and the whole thing. Oh, it's all about how each tribe, the way it got it. You know, okay? And then in Parsha Matais, it talks about the Bnei Gad and the Bnei Reuven, how they came to Moshe, and Moshe gave them their portion over in the Hadikot, the other side of the Yarden, the eastern side. And then in Parsha Masei, it's written the whole Gvulas of it, all the Gvulas with all the different places where the Gvul goes, and how it goes up and down and goes south and west, and the whole thing with the whole shape. In other words, the whole division, the whole of Eretz Yisrael, not just a part of it, or not just how it's going to be done, but how it actually is. Yeah, B'poel Mamish, all the Gulas of Eretz Yisrael. And in Parsha Dvarim, the Parsha that we read now, it's also written several times that Moshe Rabbeinu says that come and conquer the land that you've been given by the Eberster. That's all ready for you. Just go over the Yarden. That's where we were holding before you, Sinland. That's part of the Teichotas that Moshe Rabbeinu gives. But once again, he stresses that the whole of Eretz Yisrael inside certain Gvulim, and he mentions what are the Gvulim. It all was waiting for you then. He could have gone in and got it straight away. Yeah. So he said, Kol zeh, mahave gam hoiror brura l'kol echad me'itanu. Well, that becomes a very clear instruction to all of us. Aleinu la'asais Eretz Yisrael, and that's what the Tzedek said to that chassid that he wanted to come. You have to make here Eretz Yisrael. In other words, Aleinu l'kadesh, that's all long. We have to make the world a holy place. U'lahoivchoi l'dira ra'uya lo yizbara, ka'achona l'gula shleima. In other words, we got to divide up and take our portion in Eretz Yisrael, at least Baruch Ne'aseh, at least as much as we can in Avodas Hashem, and that will be a close achona for the coming of Mashiach B'poyim. V'amela, that's an amazing idea. So you might say, yeah, well, very rightfully, ad matai. So the Rebbe says, es a geula also levater. So the Rebbe says, a geula v'aknisa l'Eretz Yisrael nitan lireish gam b'parsha oisa korem b'minchas shabbesu parsha v'eschonan. The Rebbe said another very key factor in this whole inyan for the preparation for the gula and the shaylas of the gula now in our lives is hidden in the parsha we read on Shabbos to Mincha, what that Parsha V'eschon. Yeah. On Shabbos Chazon, you read Parsha Eschanan. So he said, V'eschanan al Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, Mishchanan el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's Moshe Rabbeinu praying to Hashem that Abu Bikaini should be allowed to go over into Eretz Yisrael. Now Moshe Rabbeinu's been told about twice, at least, clearly, by Hashem, that there's a gezerah. That gezerah says that you're not going over and there it's not you and not. So what's he doing? Praying. So the Rebbe said is a simon that the great tzaddikim, they never give up. Even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been goizer against them, they are not makabel, but panimia saying it. And their moms with their dog. It's another famous, the Rebbe doesn't bring it here, but in Shabbos Nachum, he brings it down. There's a famous medrash that says that if Moshe Rabbeinu would have done one more tefillah, he would have got it. He would have won it. He would have swung the issue, and Hashem would have let him go. If he would have done one more, he done 515 tefillahs. But he one of them mentioned it. Nonetheless, the medrash says if he would have done 516, he would have got him. Aber in Philippines there, that even though the Hashem has been goys and it's written in the Torah, like you said, Moshe Rabbeinu praying, you understand? So the Rebbe said from that, you see that you mustn't ever give up. You always have to keep, coming back and coming back. So that's what he says. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu mishchan el HaKodesh Baruch Hu u'mispalo 515 tefillah. He said 550 b'gematria of Eschanan. That's the word Eschanan. So he says, Al manas liskois lehikonos l'eretz Yisrael, yachad im kol klal Yisrael. Afil achrish Hashem amar LaMoshe, al toisef daber elai b'dover hazeh. In Parshas Eschanan Guvah, it's written, I said to him, don't say any more to me about this. Finish. Hashem said to Moshe, don't talk to me anymore about this. Moshe Rabbeinu, yes, the Rebbe said, Him shegoid Moshe, levakesh u'leschanel, shetuta lo yakanisa l'eretz hakodesh. Nonetheless, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give up. Va'oz tiyazu geula shleima. And if Moshe Rabbeinu would have gone in, the Gula Shlema would have begun from there, and there wouldn't have been any Gula, because Moshe Rabbeinu would have built the Beis HaMikdash. Anything Moshe Rabbeinu does is Netzchi. Anything he does is Netzchi. And Derech Agav, the Rebbe says the same thing, but to get to this Davnei. You might say, where do I get the koyach? Just keep hacking the whole time, praying and praying. So the Rebbe said, you get it from Moshe Rabbeinu. He gave the koyach, because anything that Moshe Rabbeinu does is Netzchi. So the fact that he very obstinately continued his tefillah, that's a ongoing and permanent and living koyach in the creation. And you can tune in on that koyach, and you also can keep davening. Right at the end of the sea, the Rebbe said maybe it just needs one more ad matai from 1 year. That was right there.
Ad matai.
Got it. So the Rebbe said, because the zoo omnam lo yishkaim b'poyo. It wasn't carried out b'poyo. Then he said, ulam hi tishkaim b'poyo ko'eis. The Rebbe said, now the Gula Hashleim. In other words, it didn't get carried out then, because Moshe didn't pray one more prayer. But now it's going to be, this is the time. So the Rebbe, we have to learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. Levakei shuv v'shuv lehikonos miyad la'oret b'gula mitzvah shleima. So he said, you got to learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. You have to keep, as the old saying in Yiddish, you have to keep the whole time davening. Yeah. If we will be very, very obstinate and we will ask the Eibishter, then for sure we will be zeicher to the Gula. Shari kvar huvtagnu, shanu adoy ha'achroim b'golas v'adoy ha'rishon shel ha'Gula. We have an extra miler over all the other generations that we have been promised that we're going to be the last generation of the Golas and the first one of the Gula. Where will we promise? The Friedrich Rebbe said it many times in the Kriya Vakidusha, that this is the end of all the hachonas. It's a parade where the buttons have been polished and everything is. So remember, this is the Because this is the moment. Oh, Mela, says the Rebbe, all you got to do is the package, commercial, sorry. Yeah, Chaim. I don't know, Chaim on coffee, but by me it's okay. I don't mind a cup of coffee. So the Rebbe says, Moshiach Hashem. What's it, Pshat? So the Rebbe says, Hayidiyah, this knowledge, Vatzipiyah, Lagula HaKorivo, Mudgeshes V'miyuchad, Kasher Nimtoim Kam, V'shvamot Shivim, Abayas Shel Rebbe, means the Friedrich Rebbe of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe said, we're in the Americas, Kolo Elon. We spoke about that in the Shir, in the Tamir Medoros. The Alter Rebbe writes clearly in last week's Parshas that Yerushalayim is the Merkez Kol HaYishur, and that everything in the whole world is mushpa al idei Yerushalayim. All the hashpuas that go to all the other rotes come through Eretz Yisrael. But he said, where in Eretz Yisrael? Through Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is the center from whence go all the hashpuas to the whole world. And so what is the center in Jerusalem? That's the big pitch line? Well, that's the Beis Hamikdash. So the Rebbe said that wherever you have a Beis Knesset and a Beis Hamikdash, that's like a center from which they go. So the Rebbe said, how much more so when we're talking about a bias of a Nasi, be a soil, and the leader, Han Nasi, shall call it then his basic analysis is like a center of the whole Yeshua. Yeah. So the Rebbe says, and that bias is Mashulat. Yeah, but Torah, Tefillah, Ugamilas Chas, what do they do in somebody? They daven and they learn Torah, and there's also a lot of Gemilas Chas on them. Oh, you guys don't even know. I know a little bit. I know certain people, and I don't want to necessarily mention their names, that they used to help people. Now they're already by they used to help people in 770. They would go into something, and they would have all sorts of people that when they met up with them, they would help them. Each one according to his inner, but it was how he could. Person was connected with guilt, kipshuta, handfuls of dollars, well, not single dollars. All over, helping all sorts of people, guys who need assistance and families, and the Rebbe himself. You know that the Rebbe used to write every Friday checks that went out to all sorts of people in Karnhai, that the Rebbe knew that their situation. And the Rebbe personally used to, what's his name, Label Gurner used to come in, and the Rebbe would sign all the checks, and they had special shluchim that would take the checks to the people to make sure they got them early Fridays, so they'd be able to do something with them before Shabbat. So, the Rebbe personally. So what went on in 770 went on up in the office of Melech HaMashiach. Yeah, over down in 770, I happen to know about it. I tuned in on certain people that tell you, over Mamas there. So it was a bias there, so Gemilus Chsodim. So it's all three in Yonim, Sha'oilam, Oimed, Tefillah, Gemilus Chsodim, he said, Kishaim, Shabeis HaMikdash, Nikra Bias Mishulash, Amurkab, Hu Mishleses, Aprotim. The Beis HaMikdash also got Torah, Avodah, Gemilus Chsodim. Chasodim. So he said, "V'kasher nimtoim b'bayit zeh alfei Yehudim yachad." Well, the Rebbe said that it's not just a minion here, but there's a lot of people. Yeah, and the Shabbos ticker for bringing, there's a lot of people. So the Rebbe said, Kunde, so we got at least 1,000 Yidden here altogether. So the Rebbe said, Ba'av is Yisrael, and they're all connected with Ava one to the other. Shemavia is our Goyo, yeah, B'Shabbos, Tisha B'Av, yeah, Shekol Kak Kosher L'Geula, yeah. So the Rebbe said that the whole Inyan of Ava has got a tremendous kesher with the Geulas and whatnot. So the fact that everybody's in the base of Hamedrash says that it's Me'ain, the base of Midos, but they're there, B'Avu, B'Akdas, L'lei Sovig, Zeu Azman, V'Amokim, Aki Matimim, U'Masugodim, L'Biyas HaMashiach. The Rebbe actually said it, it's all on in Nun Aleph. But I was there in Memhei, and the Rebbe said the same thing when I was there. In Memhei, the Rebbe said the Mashiach is going to come in and daven mincha with us. The Rebbe said it. Yeah, the Rebbe actually used that expression. So the Rebbe said here something very similar. He said, we got everything. We got Bayas Mashulash, we got everybody here, Ba'av, and we got everything we need. And so the Rebbe said, this is the Zman that Mashiach should come in. Yeah. Pilaplo. I was there, and it was Memai, it was a Shabbos. And the Rebbe said that there's absolutely no reason why Mashiach shouldn't come in now through the door. And there was a whole group of Yingalite that I was near in the Fabringa. They didn't want to daven mincha. When the Rebbe daven mincha, normally everybody daven with the Rebbe. You know, the Rebbe daven mincha. They said the Rebbe said Mashiach's coming in. Until Mashiach comes, we're not gonna daven mincha. And they didn't daven mincha only when they saw it was after the Rebbe was already saying Pirkei Avos. It was already late, it was almost dark. And they saw it, so they went, rather shamedly into a corner, and they made a little minyan over on the side, over there near the bathrooms, not far. And they davened, there were a whole group of them. I know who they were, some of them. Yeah, that's good. They took, Kibshulter. Avamela, so the Rebbe said, Aikahu, Shetaiku miad mamash tovei hagiola. V'ol she'afoik gam tisha b'yol, gam asiri b'ol. Even the day that we're going to fast, liyamei sosa in v'simcha, v'gam ayom shachaka. And even the days after that, akshurim afeim, kol erev v'dach yehu l'geula hashleima. So the Rebbe said, even the days after, Echadesrei ba'ov and Shteimesrei ba'ov, and Chamisha also ba'ov, and all these days, they all got, if you examine them, and the Rebbe brings examples, the day Medrash Chazal and so on, that all the days from Asiri ba'ov down to Chamisha also ba'ov are all special days, and they're all very worthy that they could bring the Geula. So the Rebbe says, and when you get to Chamisha also ba'ov, so then the Mishnah in Masechta Tainis tells us that there was a great Yom Tov by the Jewish people, even more than Yom Kippur. It was a Yom Tov as Yom Kippur. Said the Rebbe, what's it doing, being such a great Yom Tov? Because there's a tremendous aliyah after the Yerida of Tisha B'Av. If you've had a Yerida, and then you make an aliyah, then you make a very big aliyah. You follow? It's a much greater. You get a much greater impetus behind the aliyah, mitzad the goydel, you read. So therefore, that's why it is that the Milui Halavona on the 15th of Av is very different than it is another month. So the Rebbe said all the days between the fast and that day are all days when they're very ra'ui, they all have a very high nature in them, that they are ra'ui for Moshe to come. So therefore says the Rebbe, Akeshurim, Afhaim, Kol Echad, B'dakoihu, L'geula hashleima, U'befrat Chamisha osa ba'ov, Sheboi nimtza ha'yoreh b'shleimuzei. Well, that's the middle of Halal. Alavona, and for long, the lotion of the Zoya, when the Lavona has been melued, the Kaima Sihara, but actually Musa, well, that means that all the Inyanim of Yidden, including Malchus, based on it, that's the Inyan of David Melech Yisrael, Chai V'Kayom, but that's the Inyan Ashayach to the Gula. So that was the Rebbe. What are we supposed to do with all these days then? They say, Omisamo, Al-Kach, Shagam B'nai Yisrael, Hadoimim Le'yareya, Yichadshu V'yagir L'Shleimusam, V'gula Amitis V'Shleima. What do we say by Kiddush Lavona in the bracha? We say, Shehei Masidim L'Shchadish K'moisa, that Yidden are going to be mitchades like the Lavona. Meaning, what's going to happen in the Gula Sleimus, the Sleimus, Alavona Chamar, what we say over there, and Shahim Asidim, L'Schadesh Kamoisa, referring to the Yidden. So the Yidden are going to have the same aliyah that the Lavona has, the infant Sleimus, Alavona, but after such a terrible, you read it, then it's a tremendous aliyah, and that's Mi'ain, the aliyah of a Miller. I remember once that I was there by the river. I forgot which year it was now, but I was there by the river, and it was after Tishrei. It was by the end of Tishrei, after Simchas Torah, and a lot of Yidden were going back. Different groups of Yidden were taking planes and traveling. Each group back to its own country. So there was a whole group of people that they were leaving after Mincha, after the Rebbe's Mincha. They were leaving to go to the airport. So they wanted some way or another, to say farewell to the Rebbe. So what can you do? So they stood in, all of them in Gan Eden Ataktim, they all stood where the river comes out from the Zara, where he davened mincha in the Zara Kotzen upstairs, and he walked past, and he went through again and opened his door, and he went in. So they stood there, a whole big group of people. So the Rebbe would have to notice them. It's like saying, "Here I am, Rabbi, you're going to notice me." And so they all stood in a group like that. I wasn't leaving immediately at that point. So when I finished davening mincha, I somehow or another managed to cup myself into that area, and I saw what happened. So the Rebbe walked out, and it was I think the first day of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. It was already almost the end of Tishrei, and the Rebbe walked out, and the Rebbe looked at her very slowly. So the Rebbe. He understood that they wanted some sort of bracha for him. So the Rebbe gave him a very warm bracha. They should have a good, safe journey and everything. And then the Rebbe said, "Oh, Befrat, as Heint is Dr. Rosh Chodesh, today is Rosh Chodesh." And the Rebbe said, "Shehei Masidim, his Chodesh Kamoy," so the Yidden are going to be renewed in the Gula Shleima. Just like the moon is now renewed in its Tachlis Ashleimas, and the Rebbe looked at all the people sort of like in a collective way, the way the Rebbe could do it, and he said, "Shehei Masidim lehis Chadish Kamoiso." It was a very powerful. All the people take, they rise up to the Rebbe said it very powerful. I remember. I'm standing, I'm also watching from a distance. And so that's the same basic Indian, you understand? That Yidden are going to get the same chiddush that the moon and everything is going to get in the Guru's name. Avamela says, Rabbi Omno, Yahidim Atzapia Lebias HaMashiach Akshov, together with this whole longing and looking for the. Hey, that's close enough. I see you guys are playing the trick on me that the Alter Rebbe with the Rebbe Roma Malach. You know the story. You don't know the story? When the Alter Rebbe came to the Maggid for the first time, the Maggid said that his son, the Rebbe Avraham Malach, and the Alter Rebbe should make a chavrusa together. And they agreed that the Alter Rebbe would teach the Rebbe Avraham Nigla, and he would teach the Alter Rebbe Nizda. So what the Alter Rebbe, he was famous for being not in this world, you know. The Rebbe Avraham, he didn't know what this was. So the Alter Rebbe played with the clock, and the Rebbe dragged the clock. The Alter Rebbe dragged the clock back a whole hour or so that he would have a whole hour start before the real time would start. So, and the Rebbe Avraham, he didn't know anything about it. So I said, that's what you guys are up to. Anyway, whatever, so the Rebbe says, so the Rebbe says, we got to get moving. So the Rebbe says, Atoira Nechava Leino Lasa. It's not enough just to be convinced that all this is the case. He said, you got to do something. Lasa is Kola Mutar Leino, Bezman Agolas Beshleim. Whatever's left of the Golas, we got to do what we got to do. Bishleim. Koilo Gam Lishkoin Naitev Leomim Apoy. That we got to prepare ourselves very properly for the days of the Geulah which are coming. And so using the time in the Golas is not just to do the normal thing, but also to prepare yourself and get ready. So the Rebbe says, what are we supposed to do? Im Kain, Oleinu Lekabel Atzmeinu, Aklotus Teves. Im Kain, you might say, well, I've already made Aklotus Teves, I don't know how many times, in different Fabringens and everything. So the Rebbe says that's not enough. Whatever you've been maklit, there's always room for more. And you can, if you really make emissary Aklotus Teves, together with hundreds of other people, then it's got a koyach, and for sure you'll be able to carry them. Now, so we see the Rebbe never left. He never left people manure. You know, there was always. You made all sorts of good haklot. That's nothing. You got to start there. Oh, got to go. Not that it's nothing, but you got to add. You got to make further haklot. Lahoisi patera v'mitzvah gambas mana golas. Even chas v'sholem Mashiach yitakev. So what are you going to do? Sit around twiddling your thumbs? You got to make sure that you're moisiv, you're adding the whole time. Overfatcha chona hamatima lezman hageula yidavke alidi kiyum atero hamitzvah bezman hagolas kedoru. In other words, that you got to keep adding into your tero mitzvah. V'achlotas hanidroshim haim. Not just to do, but to be moisev over fatba mitzvah tzedakah shakula keneged kol hamitzvah. That in these times we all have to give more tzedakah, because tzedakah is shakula keneged kol hamitzvah. If you add into tzedakah, it's giving a cut to all of your mitzvahs. It's like adding into all of your mitzvahs. Because dog is like a chayas kloli of all your mitzvah. And sofa b'toira tzrika liyais b'frat b'siyah siyumei mesechet b'kol yom. So here's where the Rebbe gets on a very special theme. And the Rebbe said that during the 9 days, and on Tisha B'Av, and on the fast of Tisha B'Av also, you have to make siyumim. Yeah? And the Rebbe bases it on a Gemara in Masechta, well, actually, there's 2 Gemara, one in Shabbos and one in Moed Katan, but it's written that one of the greats Amoraim, Rabbi Yezer, it's written that when he met up with a young man that had just finished Masechta, so he said, we have to make a Suda, we have to make a. And it's written that he's avidna yom tova l'rabbanan. I made a yontif for all the Talmud, everybody, and they would make a suda, and it would be a simcha in the whole base medrash where somebody finished a Masechta. So the Rebbe said, what's the greatness of finishing a Masechta? That's when you finish. So the Rebbe said that the completion of anything in Kedusha, there's an extra simcha, an extra light that comes into the world. So the Rebbe said, how much more so we're going to finish the whole Golah? And the whole weight of the Golah is going to reach its Siyum. And that's going to be a tremendous Yontif. And then we have to get ready by making Siyumim on Masechta. Based on that Gemara, we have to make a Yontif. So not Lubavitch, it's also makubal to make siyum. Not mummies every day and all, and they even eat bosa, and they even drink wine at the Suda. So the Rebbe spoke about that on a couple of occasions, and he said he doesn't want to go all that far to be matir, bosa v'yayin at the Suda, or you should eat good food and everything, what you can eat, there's plenty of good things you can eat, but you have to make a Suda and a Hizvada together with the Siyum. So the Chiddush here is that the Rebbe said not only you make the Siyum until Tisha B'Av, but you make it for all the days after, up until Chamish Osavov, because he said that they're also very special days. So you got to continue the Siyumim until you get to Chamish Osavov, and then Chamish Osavov, it's going to be an Aliyah in Pnimis HaKesar. That's what the Rebbe said. That the Aliyah on Chamish Osavov is mamish into the Pnimis HaKesar. That's what he writes. Just let's bring a couple of lines. The Chamisha Boza Ba'ol Ba'atzmai Oleinu Olo Nema, in reference to Chamisha Boza Ba'ol. Lo Yehoyu Yom Tevil Me Yisrael Chamisha, very, very high yonder. There weren't other Yom Tevil comparable to this. Kedai Lasa, he says, Vadas Gedoyla, not to stomach his Vadas, it has to be as Vadas Gedoyla. Either Rebbe said it comes out on every Shabbat. So in order to avoid all the Shabbos, you have to make on Thursday night. The Rebbe said to make on Thursday night a very big, for bringing. It's Vadas Gedoyla, it takes Simcha Gedoyla, Yachadim Siyum Masechet, you have to make a Siyum Masechet, V'im Nasiyas of Tzedek, V'Kabbalah Sachlotas Teves. Another time over, Kabbalah Sachlotas Teves. Oh, yeah, you guys are patlachim. Remember, ומכיוון שהשונה יהיה חמיש עוזר בו ויועצה ביום השישי, כדאי לעשות זה בלילה שלפני זה. זה ודווקא מתי שמחה גדולה עד לשמחת נשואין. Just like, and then the Rebbe said, what's the marriage? The marriage is the Eibusher with the Jewish people. And who's going to be the big Masada Kedusha? Melech HaMelech. Mashiach. You follow? And has to be a really massive for a brain. So everybody forgive me, I don't know any more quote, but that's the summing up of the whole thing. So from that we see that what a person thinks to himself, he's got to have time to think things over. He's got to rest for a while and he should take it easy, build up his square hairs. And the Rebbe doesn't notice that. It would appear from all the inyonim, and you have to keep making a cloth table, that the real and the emerson menucha for a person is definitely when he's eating the whole time in Kedusha. If you're eating the whole time in Stam Zachar, then ain't no you get from it. But if you're eating the whole time in Kedusha, and you're part of this whole tremendous build-up of the Kedusha building towards the Yerushalayim, then you're not going to get tired. Except for poor old schleppers like myself. But anyway, whatever. We're not going to get tired, Be'ez Hashem. And we're going there with helicopter with high flags to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. We'll be going in a new car. Our batteries are car over there. And we'll be going to meet Mashiach, take him here. That's the real one.
They didn't know there was a time.
What does it say to that monkey?
Well, Hashem, I think we got everything we need right here. The Rebbe told us what we need to do. We just got a shot. Is arm? No, it's not. Okay. Chaim.
Amen. Delicious. Yaakov, the Chaim.
Coming, and he was honest.
We don't need this one. We got L'chaim. That's good.
Another brother.
Yeah, I know. Right. It's not.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Eighth of Av, yeah.
Yeah.
Good son,
Amen. Let's go.
Now we can have more o'clock to save it.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned it, but shit.
I'm a leather.
Go.
So, on Yom HaLetters, you have to make a cloth. The Rebbe's so heavy. The Rebbe's making a cloth with you the whole time. And nonetheless, you have to make a cloth. David Kadosh.
Yeah.
So,
So don't feel on the spot.
We're going for bringing in the yeshiva after Pascha yeshiva, so I don't know if I can just wait now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You can make the same one.
Solomon.
oh, you are the lips?
Yeah.
Oh, son of a lip.
Is the video still on?
That's already a lips boy, you know.
That's it. Should be in the movie.
Liv Solomon from Sydney.
That's it. It's his son.
That's his
Oh,
son.
wow.
Right, shalom
Is your
alaikum.
father with you?
Yeah.
Yeshiva with your father?
I
You
know,
told him his
I'm enjoying
favorite.
So fine.
Very good.
it. Yeah.
So like this.
Awesome.
This week was the Elula de Ariza. So it's mutar to tell a story about the Ariza, and from that to learn something to Haklotas David, not that we're pushing him, not that we're telling him what he should be making, but we're just throwing out a suggestion. Yeah. What was, the famous story, and it's actually, it's really pure exactly where this is brought down in the Kisvei Arizal. But it's brought down that it's actually in the Kisvei Arizal. It just actually need to find exactly about upon him. It's written that the Arizal was Noyak every Erev Shabbos. He would go out into the field to be Makabel Shabbos. And they would say the Pizman of the Rebbe Shlomo Kabbat, the Lechodedi, because it was only recently written at that time, because the Rebbe Shlomo Kabbat, he was the Rav of the Ramah. The Ramah began learning Kabbalah from the Rebbe Shlomo Kabbat. And the Rebbe Shlomo Kabbat, he was like a generation before the Ramah, but he was the Ramach's Rebbe. And the Arizal came just at the time of the Stalkers of the Ramah. So it could be that maybe he saw the Rebbe Shlomo Kabbat. I'm not sure about that, but it's all in the basically at the same time. So the Arizal used to go out, what he's told me, them into an apple field. Had to be up or near to an apple field. But let's get to it all in from Malchus. And Malchus called the Stei HaTapuk, and how they call it the apple field. That's got to do with the Aliyah Shabbos, there Malchus, a whole in. And when they would finish all that, they would go into the base of Medrash, and they would daven Mariv inside the base of Knesset of a Kabbalah Shabbos was occupied. So there's a whole Maisa was Mephusim when they get to the Rabbeinu Moshe Alshik. You know the whole story. And he was unbelievable great in Drush. And he was also a big robe and a Poisik here in Tzfat. And he wanted very much to learn Kabbalah from the Arizal. And he asked him several times that he wants him to teach him. He already knew Kabbalah, but he wanted to hear Kabbalah from the Arizal. So each time he asked him, the Arizal sort of pushed him off. Said he doesn't have time right now. It's not a good moment. He would push him off. So one Friday afternoon, the Alshik decided that he's going to go out and sit on a wall where they go past the Arizal, what he's told me to, into the field to be Makabel. And because that's a big 8 raton, I think that's a big glorious moment, he will jump up and he will say to the Arizal that he wants him to teach him the Kabbalah. So the Alshik, a long time before Shabbos came in, he was already Makabel Shabbos. He went out and sat on this wall, and he knew that the Arizal, the Talmudim would come, and he was all ready to jump up and ask him. So just before Kabbalah Shabbos came in, he started to feel drowsy. And he never felt that way until just before Kabbalah Shabbos. And he just couldn't find it. as the minutes went by, he became more and more. In the end, he dropped into a heavy sleep, and he sort of was sitting on this wall, and he sort of fell off the wall. He leant on some stones that were sort of like, alongside the wall, and he was sloughing. So meantime, the Arizal comes by with all told me that they see that this could have been a more major. So they said, let's wake him up. He must have had some meaning. Let's wake him up and see what does he want, what's his in it. So the Arizal said, no, let him sleep. So they slow him, that's it. So later he woke up when it was already dark, and he saw that the Arizal had already gone back and forth, the whole thing. And later he asked the Arizal, what was that? How come he dropped asleep? I tell you, it was the most perfect moment for him to intercept the Arizal. So the Arizal listened. He said, your neshama came down into the world for other tremendous inyanim. But you don't, for your shlichus in the world, you don't need to learn from me. And he said that all the generations are going to be perfectly happy with you and all the Svarim that you're going to write. But you don't need me to teach you the Kabbalah. Yeah. That's what the Arizal said to me. He was, after that, he sort of gave up. So anyway, one afternoon, Friday, the Arizal was going with the Talmidim, and they're already out into the apple field, beautiful, big, tremendous ruknias and everything. All of a sudden, the Arizal says to those who are alongside him, what about we're all going now to Jerusalem? All of us. We'll all go to Jerusalem. And they go to Jerusalem. We're here in Tsfat, on way to Jerusalem, and not only that, it's Shabbos. What are we going to just leave our family, leave her? What's going on? So a couple of them said to the Arizal, okay, if the Rav says that we're ready. But there was a group of others that they said, we're sorry, Rabbi, we have to go home and tell our wives they shouldn't expect us to come home. And a couple others said, yeah, we'll have to do the same thing. So the Arizal said, oh, you made like that. He said, lost opportunity, Papa. So everybody said, what? So the Arizal said this was a tremendous moment for the Geulah Shlema. And we could have gone, all of us, on the Anan Ishmael to Jerusalem. You follow? And there'd be no problem, no worry, not about anything. But since you guys said you have to go and tell your wives, and you have to do this. He said, well, I don't know. You guys are going to, normally you have to tell your wife, but here we're talking about that. Yeah. So they lost the opportunity. Follow? Yeah. So it comes along, and that's a very amazing thing, that we don't find that the real said, listen, well, you guys get out of here. I don't want to know you guys again. Look at what you did. We could have gone in the Geulah Shlema, and you guys have messed it up. I don't want to know you fellas again. Get out of here. We don't find that. We find the Arizal was mamshik with them as the Talmidim. So the Rebbe said it just shows you how you got to be able to be forgiving, even if in such a major thing as all that. However, what do we see? What do we learn from that? So the Rebbe said, if they'll come along somebody like the Arizal, and he will say that everything's ready for the Geulah. We got to already, we're all going into the Geulah. Don't come and say, oh, wait a minute, Rebbe, I got to fix this up. I got to go on and talk it over with my Rebbetzin. I got to in. Don't chas v'sholem fall into that mistake. If somebody says to you, and he's I am a embodiment of the Arizal. And he says, you know, it's the time, and what is the way to do it? Of course, Rebbe, we're all going to Yerushalayim, and that's it. What will be, everything will be good anyway. So the Rebbe said, what the Arizal didn't realize that that's a problem with their families. But Mazed Nexo, like and afterwards we'll all be sorted out. So there's a table away. If everything's going to be ideal, that'll also be ideal. It wasn't the don't let's make a mistake of falling back into the Balabatish guy. I'm sorry, Rebbe, I know we can talk this over, we can think it over, we can ask my Rebbe to, what's going to be with my kitchen, I just ordered the plumber to come make a big, how do you call it, chip or tim or something, what's going to be. That shouldn't be oil all it does for clown. You say, yes, of course, Rebbe. You say, we're going to the Gula. Here we go. We want, the Gula now. We want Moshe now. And here we are. That's the way. That's the limit from the how to call it, the Yotzai, the Arizal. On the one hand, the Arizal, he was very into teaching his Talmidim and everything. The Arizal could have said, I got my job, what does it matter to me, No, you should realize that according to certain great authorities, one of the reasons, the whole reason the Arizal came to Eretz and met up with the Neshama of Rabbeinu Chaim Vital was in order to bring the Gil. There was a tremendous Yisrael at that time. But the Haredim, the Rabbeinu Elazar Skori, he was a contemporary with he was in the same group. He was the Shamash in the shul where the Arizal davened, the Haredim. He was a big tzaddik nester. He with a whole group of guys. They said Moshe now. They said only Moshe. And they went down to Meron, and they said they're going to make a yichud, which if they make that yichud, Moshe will come. They went down, and they stayed there, and by the Rebbe Shimon in Meron for a whole couple of weeks. They didn't have food. They just went. In the end, the wife of one of the Rabbonim, she came to the Rav, who was the one who was the Rav at that time in Tzfat. I forgot who it was, the Beis Yosef or the Mabit or one of these people, and said to them, you have to send a few people over to Meron and Paskin that these guys should come home. Otherwise, they're not going to come home. they're not going to come home. And who knows what will be with them. And that was a Haredim. Right? So it was a Yisrael at that time. So we see the Arizal could have just said, he's got his shul, he's got his tzaddikim, he's got people. He's being Megillah or something that people have never heard of this before. And leave me alone, No, there is Geula. We're going, guys, all of us right now. That's what we have to learn. We have to understand that, my boy. So, Be'ez Hashem, you'll be able to give it over to your parents. How long are you here for, by the way?
Where? In Tzfat?
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Are you leaving tomorrow already?
That's the plan.
Huh?
That's the plan.
After Shabbat?
Before Shabbos.
You'll be here, so.
I don't plan to be here Shabbos. We'll see.
Anyway.
Yerushalayim, I thought, based on your story, to be in Yerushalayim Shabbos.
So you should realize that the original said that there's a special, how do you call it?
Tunnel.
minhara,
Tunnel.
a cave,
Tunnel. Yeah.
tunnel, yeah. That if you were to get to that tunnel, it would only take you 18 minutes from Tzfat to Jerusalem. 18 minutes, yeah. And some people want to time it, that the reason he did it a couple of times. He went to Jerusalem and back, but he knew where this tunnel was. He knew it. Well, we wish you.
Chaim.
Emil Philip Plus on a miser.
It's
It's like, you know, in Jerusalem, Chizkiyahu, he built a menorah, a underground tunnel. That should ever there be a sakona, it would be possible to get out of Jerusalem through this menorah. But come out near the Shiloh or somewhere like that. You follow? Philip Plus on Azar. So that was what he called it, Chizkiyahu. So it seems that somebody, I'm not sure who it was, built this menorah that you'd go from Tzfat to Jerusalem in 80 minutes.
We're going with Anan Ishmael. You can go to Anan Ishmael. Anan Ishmael is
The
better.
Rebbe said the Anan Ishmael will be quicker than the jet plane. The Rebbe said,
Quicker in the tunnel.
the Rebbe said that the Anan Ishmael will be faster than the jet plane.
So we don't need the tunnel.
Huh?
We don't need the tunnel. We don't need the tunnel.
Yeah. I'm just putting that in for good measure. I thought it might be helpful. As they all say, if you have a business with the river, you don't need tunnels.
Chaim.
Because if you can't just go over, you go under. It's the opposite.
No,
At my time.
he has the Yom Haledet, give him a bracha.
Yeah, I gotta give everyone else brachas.
Yeah, we're ready for them.
Just, Rabbi, can I share a quick
Oh, so
story?
what's got to do with his Yom Haledet?
You're giving a bracha.
Yeah, I'm giving him. I didn't get to it. Yes. So that's much it says. Much you got to realize that you know, it's only just a swift. And with you know, just to keep hacking, and since the river says, you know, it's getting nearer and nearer and nearer, you got to know that that's at any moment, you understand? And not to be put up by anything, not anything, because like the river says, the whole world was created for Yidden, and the Torah was created for Yidden. No matter, everything is only to assist. There's nothing you can really get in the way. It's not really shine. That's what we learned to be giving of the let's say. That's what I wish Matis over there. And it's a bit of a golus, that's the truth. Over there. You know, I got the power to be about. It's like the miser with the Rebbe Tzemach over that the Mitzvah Rebbe said she's going to run between the drops. She'll run, there'll be drops for him, but she'll run between the drops.
Yeah.
That's
In Miami, there's hurricanes.
huh?
In Miami, there's hurricanes.
Yeah.
They're a little harder to maneuver.
Just to say, you know,
That's about what you're doing.
how's it written? Leah yes. Oh man, Hashem will help you, my boy.
Amazing.
And because I come back to my old repetition, Simcha will be talking. Hashem will help. Chaim should have read Yom Vishonim. Chaim Hinsky, put all of us together.
Thank you.
in the Gula Meets restaurant.
If I could, I want to share a short story.
A short
Short
story.
story.
A short story.
A story. I want to share a short
You want to tell a
story.
short
Yeah.
story?
Quick story. It's okay, and then
Yeah,
big,
give us a bracha.
just I can give out quick brachas. I have to run to the yeshiva. But just brief story. It happened the other day. It's a fresh story. So my son, his name is Shilo Menachem. He just had his 7th birthday. Just Baruch Hashem turned 7. So a few weeks before his birthday, I asked him. I said, Shilo, what do you want for your birthday? So I thought a kid of 6 years old, he's going to ask for a bicycle, a computer, one of these type of things. He said, Abba, I want a Rebbe dollar. I said, what? He said, I want a Rebbe dollar. It's very impressive that he's asking for a Rebbe dollar, but I said it would have been cheaper if you asked for a bicycle or a computer, because these days Rebbe dollars are a hot ticket. They're not so easy to come by. So I said something to my wife, and my wife is like, please, tell him at his bar mitzvah he can get a Rebbe dollar. At 7 years old, he won't appreciate it. It's a big thing to get a Rebbe dollar. When he gets 13, then he'll get a Rebbe dollar. So I mentioned something to him, and he said, but I want a Rebbe dollar. Said, okay, look, let's see what happens. So a few days after this, I was learning. I learn the Sikha every week, the non-afternoon based Sikha. I have a Charus, so I learned it inside. Tuesday morning, 2.5 hours before I go to work, I learned the Sikha with them. We finished the Sikha, and I closed the book, and I looked at the picture of the Rebbe in my office on the wall. I said, Rebbe, my son, Shilo Menachem, he's turning 7 years old. He wants a Rebbe dollar. Help, find a way, B'tzrat Hashem, that I should be able to do it for him. That was it. That night, it was a Tuesday. Tuesday night, I give over the Sikha Summer, a short Sikha, like an hour. At our place called the Center, where we have like a youth center for at-risk, the Babich boys that have gone off the derech. We help bring them back. So he's giving over the Sikha, and my phone rings. And I usually don't pick up my phone, but it's my wife, and she has a special ring. And I pick it up, and she knows I was giving a class, so she says, look, I know you're in the middle of a shir. I hate to disturb you, but I'm at some events. And it was for a place in Israel, Yad Lachem, where they help Yad Lachem. They came to America, and they basically were fundraising. So they said it wasn't so much. It was like $25 or $30 a month. You could pay it out over time, over a couple of years, whatever it was, to buy Rebbe dollars to support the organization. Now my wife doesn't know. That morning I asked the Rebbe for $1. So she calls me up. She's like, "Is it okay if I get the dollar? If I put in the money for the dollar? I never asked you for tzedakah for anything, but I think it's important that we get this dollar." I said, hey, "Yes." And wait till I tell you the story. What happened this morning? The kids I go home from my shir. My wife comes home from her events. I said, "You're not going to believe it. This morning, I asked the Rebbe for $1 for Shiloh for his birthday." And my wife said, "Oh, I actually got it from my mother, because my mother's not feeling well. Her mother is, she'd have her flush lema, Margalit Bas Naomi. She fell and broke her leg. She's, B'tzrat Hashem, she should be well." So my wife said, "I want to buy the Rebbe. I wanted to buy it for my wife, for my mother."
She didn't know that you
She didn't. She did, but she said no when he turns bar mitzvah. She didn't know that morning I asked the Rebbe for $1. She just thought I assumed this. Okay, I agreed with her. So I told her the story. I said, "This morning I asked the Rebbe for $1 for Shiloh." She said, "Oh, I didn't know, so it must be your dollar." I said, No. If you want it for your mother, church." She goes, "Look, if you asked the Rebbe this morning and he's delivering it the same day, we went back and forth a few times. Eventually she said, "You know what? Shiloh wants it, you asked for it, let's give it to him for his birthday." I said, "Okay." I said, "Wow, it's instant express. The same day I asked, I did it." Wow. So the story's not over. So a few days later, we're davening Shabbos. Every Sunday we make a minyan at our youth center. And I start telling the story. This is literally from Tuesday to Sunday. I start giving over the story. And at the beginning of the story, before I get very far, I said, I looked at a picture of the Rebbe and asked for $1 for our son for his birthday. One of the guys who works for us at the center part-time, he stands up. There's about 15, 20 guys there. I'm telling the story. He goes, "Matt, I can help you." So what do you mean? He said, "I can help you with your request." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You want a Rebbe dollar for your son?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I can help you." So what do you mean you can help me? And he stands up, he opens up his wallet. He says, we're from Chabad, we're from Crown Heights. I've only given away one of these in my life. But I want to give it to you for your son for his birthday. I said, hold on a second. I didn't finish the story. He doesn't know I already got one. So I said, maybe I shouldn't finish the story. He just gave me a Rebbe. I said, you know what? I finished the story, and I said, this is unbelievable. So this one is really for my son, and the first one was really for my wife's mother. 2 Rebbe dollars in 4 days. And the one he gave for my son was written on the back for the sichum, the conclusion of the 7th cycle of the Rambam, and it was my son's 7th birthday. So Amish made 2 Rebbe dollars in 4 days from that message of asking the Rebbe. So I bring up this story for a reason. There's a lot of people in Chabad, out of Chabad. There's a whole big machlokas balagan. The Rebbe's alive, he's not alive. It means spiritually, it means physically, gufka. Everyone's banging, hacking, and trying to go about this. I could just tell you that for me, the Rebbe is alive more than ever before. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Rebbe. I wouldn't have come to Israel if it wasn't for the Rebbe. I wouldn't be back in America. I was living in Tsfat 12 years ago, right here in the old city, in Abulha, and Rehov Abu. Never wanted to come back to America. I made Aliyah. I wrote to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I made Aliyah, and I opened the Igros, and he writes back, I'm very happy you made Aliyah, but what about all the Jews in America who need your help? You need to go back to America. I almost had a heart attack. I put the book on the shelf, and every month the Rebbe kept telling me, go back to America, go back to America. From my wife, from my shlichus, from my pranasa, every single aspect of my life, the Rebbe has guided me. And he's available now. You can write to the Igros, but people say, I don't get an answer. If you're going into the Rebbe for Yechidus, but you open up the Rebbe, tell me an answer. You put on a hat and a girdle, you wash your hands, you go to the mikveh, you take something upon yourself, you take it seriously, and the Rebbe is going to communicate you like if he was in front of your face. And so the Rebbe is alive. The Rebbe is here. Nothing changes. He told us do everything we can to bring Mashiach. The Rebbe, if we saw him, what do you think he'd be telling us? Exactly what's here, what he's telling us. So I want to say a big thank you to Rav Gafne, and I have a tremendous amount of gratitude to you, because I always say that the Rebbe is our pipe, our connection to Hashem, but Rav Gafne is our connection to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe is alive for me because of Rav Gafne, and for that I'm tremendously in gratitude for you, and I thank you, and Hashem should bless you for Chaim Nitzchim, for a simcha, for menucha, simcha, vatum lavav, only revealed good, but gashmias, for ruchnias, for nira, v'neva, happiness and health for you and your family, your extended family, your talmidim, and Mashiach now, l'chaim. And every one of you individually, I'm a Kohen, I want to bless you. Have in mind what it is you want. Hashem should bless you with revealed good, for gashmias, for ruchnias, for nira, v'nigla, bone, chaim, v'zone, and the most important thing, it should be ba'enei basar. All the brachas God does is good. We want to see. They should all be revealed. Mashiach now. Thank you, David.
Chaim, Atzlocha, Mavorach, Mizborach, Ani Avorcha.
I will. When are you going back home?
Back to New York.
Are you going to New York? And then this way.
No, I live in New York.
But you probably talked to them.
I spoke to them today.
I carry on.